Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong receives Johor's highest honour in recognition of close ties between the state and Singapore. The Young Lions get their SEA Games campaign going this weekend by taking on Laos. With elections on Monday, will Filipinos make the son of dictator Ferdinand Marcos their new president? Good evening, you're watching The Big Story with me, Hairianto Diman. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you will not miss a single episode. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was in Johor today to receive the state's highest honour from Sultan Ibrahim Iskandar. At the investiture ceremony held at the Istana Besar in Johor Bahru, Mr. Lee was conferred the title of Dato Sri Paduka Mahkota Johor, or SPMJ for short. It means Grand Commander of the Order of the Crown of Johor First Class, and it's in recognition of the long-standing close and strong relations between Singapore and Johor. Previous Singapore recipients include then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew and then Law Minister E.W. Barker, who were given the award in 1984, and then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong, who was given the award in 1991. Mr. Lee's wife, Madam Ho Ching, was also given a state award, the first Singaporean to be conferred the title of Dato Sri Mulia Sultan Ibrahim Johor, or SMIJ for short. It means Grand Commander of the Order of Sultan Ibrahim of Johor First Class. President Halimah Yacob will visit South Korea next week to attend the presidential inauguration ceremony at the invitation of President-elect Yoon Suk Yeol. While in Seoul, Madam Halimah will attend a bilateral meeting and a banquet dinner hosted by Mr. Yoon. She will also meet South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Singapore's first solar farm with an integrated rainwater harvesting system officially opened today. The Sembcorp facility in Tuas can generate enough energy to power about 4,700 four-room HDB flats a year. And the rainwater it collects will be used to cool and clean the solar panels. The Asian Games are due to take place in Hangzhou in September has been postponed indefinitely. The announcement came as China battles a resurgence of COVID-19 cases. The Olympic Council of Asia said in a statement the decision to postpone was taken after considering the pandemic situation and the size of the Games. The new dates for the sporting contest will be revealed in the near future. The OCA also said that the Asian Youth Games scheduled for December in Shantou, China, would be cancelled, having already been postponed once. Meanwhile, the 31st edition of the SEA Games is set to kick off in a week's time on Thursday, May 12. Held in Hanoi, Vietnam, the Games was originally scheduled to take place end of last year, but was postponed to this year due to COVID-19. And as part of the Straits Times' coverage ahead of the biennial multi-sport event, we are putting the spotlight on 5 athletes who are making their debut. The first profile out today is teen sprinter Mark Lewis.
Hi, I'm Mark Brian Lewis. I'm 19. I'll be representing Singapore in athletics at the 2022 SEA Games. I picked up track and field when I was in primary school, just for fun for CCA. To join my cousin because he asked me to join. So when I was primary 3, I started off. My coach asked me to start with long jump and hurdles. I realized I had potential and wanted to take it seriously after the Asian Youth Championships. Now, after winning it, I felt good and just wanted to go further. The toughest period I faced, I think, was during the COVID phase, where I couldn't train with my friends, couldn't compete. So I think I lacked some motivation to train. I feel grateful to be able to compete in the SEA Games this year and grateful for my teammate coach and my family. My goals for the SEA Games are to get a personal best and hopefully to be able to get on the podium.
Sports correspondent Sazali Abdul Aziz is here to share more. Saz, we've just seen one of the profiles, teen sprinter Mark Lewis. Tell us more about him and what are his medal chances?
Yeah, well, Mark is 19. He's a young man who's very soft-spoken but has very quick feet. He has clocked a 10.39 second effort in December last year, which makes him the third fastest Singaporean of all time, just behind C. Kunalan and UK Sham. And he is probably our most exciting men's sprinting prospect since UK Sham 20 years ago. So yeah, he's really one to watch out for. In fact, last month he beat the reigning SEA Games champion from Malaysia. And yeah, we'll keep a close eye and see how he does. In terms of whether he could medal, I think a podium is a good shout. He's in good form. He's been training well. He received short-term deferment from national service to compete in Vietnam, and I'm sure he wants to get something to show for it. And yeah, I think that would be an amazing achievement for his first SEA Games.
And over the next few days, ST will be revealing the other 4 profiles. Could you give us a little teaser as to who they are?
Yeah, Mark is one of 5 young athletes we've chosen to profile, and they are all making their debut at this Hanoi SEA Games, and they are all born in the year 2000 or later, which makes them literally the 21st century Singaporean athlete. We just thought it would be nice to shine a light on these young talents, who will carry the flag for Singapore in overseas international competitions over the next decade, maybe 2 decades, and just basically talk to them, see what makes them tick, and how they got to where they are now.
We'll definitely be looking out for those profiles. Separately, the SEA Games football matches kick off today and Singapore is set to face Laos tomorrow. Now, the Young Lions have never lost to them. Looks like an easy win for us.
It's 2022. I think easy wins are getting fewer and farther between, especially at international level. And Laos have a very experienced coach, Michael Weiss, who used to coach the Philippine senior national team. So I'm sure he'll get them organized. Having said that, I do think that Singapore have enough in us to get the 3 points and get off to a winning start.
What about the Young Lions' chances of finishing the top 2 of their group and eventually reaching the semi-finals?
Yeah, that's a really tough ask. We got the best possible draw we could have hoped for. We avoided Vietnam and a couple of other difficult, Indonesia, for example, who are the dark horses for the gold medal. But having said that, our squad makeup has been really hit by a few losses. Most notably, the 3 Fandi brothers, Irfan, Iksan and Ilhan. Ilhan is out of injury. Irfan and Iksan were not released by their Thai clubs, as well as an injury to our captain, Jacob Mahler. Again, having said that, a win against Laos in the first game, if they can carry that momentum for a good showing against Thailand in the second game, and things may fall into place. We get into the semi-finals, and then from there it's basically 2 cup finals, and you never know what can happen.
Well, Sazali, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Sports correspondent Sazali Abdul Aziz. Sazali, together with our other sports desk colleagues, will be heading to Hanoi to cover the games. They'll be covering the action on the ground and keeping a close watch on Singapore's medal count. And you can find all of it on straitstimes.com. Overseas, the opposition Labour Party in the UK has taken control of key councils in London in a major blow to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party. The early results showing that voters are out to punish his government over a series of scandals. Hong Kong's former security chief John Lee is set to be confirmed as the city's next chief executive on Sunday by a small election committee of around 1,500 members. He is the sole candidate in the race and has reportedly said in recent days that he vows to make reopening Hong Kong's borders a priority. More than 67 million Filipinos have registered to vote in the elections on May 9th to elect their next president and vice president. Leading in the polls is a former Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr., also known as Bongbong. He's the son and namesake of the country's late dictator. His closest challenger is current Vice President Leni Robredo, who has hosted huge political rallies in recent days. Joining us from Manila is our Philippines correspondent Raul Dancel. Raul, let's have a closer look at the two main presidential hopefuls. Where do they stand on the big issues?
This election is not about issues. It's more about personalities, legacies, history. To understand why, we have to look at the candidates. Candidate number one, and the one that polls say will likely win by a landslide, is Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the son of the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. To recall, the Marcoses fled the Philippines in disgrace in 1986. That's more than 36 years ago, after a military-backed civilian revolt. The revolt happened because people just got tired of all the killing, of all the stealing that happened under Marcos Sr. Anyway, since the Marcoses returned in 1992, they have been trying to correct that great injustice that they believed happened to them in 1986. They believe that 1986 was a mistake. They believe that it wasn't really a revolution, but a coup by a minority. They insist that what happened during the reign of Marcos Sr. was a period of prosperity, of peace, of growth, that martial law happened only because Marcos Sr. didn't want the Philippines to fall into the hands of communists. Anyway, that's been their narrative through all these years now. And Marcos Jr. has been aiming for the presidency precisely to push that narrative. He thinks that he believes strongly that if he is elected president, that will mean that a rejection of the 1986 revolt, and that people have finally come around to believing in their version of history, that they suffered a great injustice, that the Marcos regime was marked by prosperity, of growth, of peace, and that maybe it's time that the Philippines go back to that period. Now, interestingly, the Marcos Jr.'s top rival is Vice President Leni Robredo, and she is right now the heir to the pro-democracy movement that ousted Marcos Sr. in 1986. And so what we're seeing right now in our election is like a redo of the 1986 electoral race between Marcos Sr. and the pro-democracy movement back then. So in summary, the election hasn't really been about the economy, about politics, but more on a relitigation of the 1986 People Power revolt. And by all indications, people are coming over to Marcos Jr.'s side.
So, Raul, on that note, let's talk about what voters want. After 6 years of a Duterte presidency, what are the voters looking out for from the next person who moves into the Malacanang Palace?
Well, Marcos Jr. is popular because he has been styling himself as the successor of the current president, Rodrigo Duterte. He is right now saying that he will be a continuity of what Mr. Duterte started. And this means, but who was Duterte? Duterte was a candidate who styled himself against the oligarchy as a populist leader, as a leader who will be good for the poor. And so Marcos is towing essentially the same line. He's promising the people that if he is elected president, there will be great change in their lives. There will be prosperity for them. Salaries will increase. The country will remain drug-free and crime-free. And so they're expecting that from Marcos. In fact, from any other candidate. But right now, it is Marcos that they see who clearly has their interest in mind.
So just to get it right, Raul, what you're saying is Bongbong Marcos is set to win the next presidential election.
Well, Harianto, polls say that he will win by a landslide. Polls are sometimes wrong, right? But in the past, when polls are wrong, usually the gap is within the margin of error. But this time around, Marcos's lead over Ms. Robredo is by over 30 percentage points, which is a big gap to surmount. Anyway, Robredo's camps are positive. I think that the numbers are wrong, that it does not reflect what's really happening on the ground. They look at the massive rallies that Robredo has been able to organize, and the spirit of volunteerism. The volunteers that that Robredo has managed to mobilize. They think that there is a good chance, that the gap between Marcos and Robredo are closer than what polls show. But if I was a betting man, I would put my bet, of course, on the odds-on favorite, which is Marcos Jr. And so we're looking at another Marcos to lead the Philippines in the next 6 years.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see for the election come Monday. Thank you so much, Raul, for your insights. Philippines correspondent Raul Dancel. For all the latest news on the Philippine elections, you'll find our stories at str.sg/Asia. And we'll be chatting with Raul again when the results are out. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Haryanto Diman. Have a good weekend and we'll see you next week.